Hi there, everybody. My name is Brady Jensen. I will be doing my presentation today on the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. A little bit about what that is. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, was established in 1977 after the Watergate scandal. And if you don't remember what the Watergate scandal was or is, it was when President Nixon was in office. He had some spies break into the Democratic National Headquarters in Watergate to steal top secret documents and to bug the office telephones. He was later caught because those spies were sent to re-break in because one of the wiretaps wasn't working correctly, and so they were sent to fix the wiretap and reinstall one. Well, while they were breaking in again, after the initial break-in, one of the security guards found that the locks were taped, and so he called the cops. The cops came, arrested the spies. President Nixon denied any involvement in this. The curious thing was the spies had the number to the White House in his campaign, and this time he was up for re-election, and so he was going up against the Democratic Party. He was eventually re-elected. A few years later, they were able to find that he was involved. They found some tapes, or he had some tapes, recordings of what went on in the White House and in the Oval Office, that they were able to consider enough proof to show that he was part of it. He quickly resigned from office because there was an impeachment coming. He did resign, but this kind of started finding, the government started finding a lot of, very corrupt practices going on within the United States, but also foreign. So the FCPA, or the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, was put into place. And the idea was, there's two main points to it. They have accounting provisions and anti-bribery provisions. The anti-bribery provision is what prohibits a company, prohibits them corruptly paying foreign officials in order to obtain or retain business. The accounting provision requires companies keep books and create internal controls to provide assurance of their transactions for foreign transactions. The SEC and the DOJ, or the Securities Exchange Commission and Department of Justice, are the ones that are currently enforcing. They helped put this into place and are currently enforcing this act. So there's been a couple issues throughout the years with it being enacted in 1977. There are some definition issues. One of the clauses that has gotten the most issues or questions on definition is this one that states that the FCPA prohibits companies from corruptly paying foreign officials. So foreign officials is the important word right there, in order to obtain or retain business. So that was kind of broad for some people. People were able to argue what a foreign official was, and it was later defined as any officer or employee of a foreign government or any department, agency, or instrumentality thereof. We run into another issue. Throughout the since it was enacted, this act pretty much was dormant for years until up about 2009. The United States charged a company called Terra with violating the FCPA. Joel Esquinaza, I'm going to kill that name every time I say it, and Carlos Rodriguez, they co-owned and directed Terra Telecommunications, and Terra worked heavily with a Haitian company called Telecom. Long story short, Terra was paying Telecom kickbacks and other briberies to obtain and maintain the business, and they were indicted and convicted on charges such as, I've got it right here, charges of conspiracy, substantive FCPA violations, and concealment money laundering. So like I said, they were found guilty on all counts, but in 2011, about 2 years after they were indicted and convicted, they came back to appeal this conviction. They argued that Telecom was not a government official or a foreign official there. And the question then became, what is an instrumentality? Because it is true that Telecom was not a foreign government, wasn't a department of the government, wasn't an agency of the government, but was it an instrumentality? So Judge Martin, who was the judge of this case, sought out to, fix this gap of definition in the act. And through a lot of studying, she came to define it as an entity. An instrumentality is an entity controlled by the government of a foreign country that performs a function of the controlling government treats as its own. So it kind of has that two parts, so the control and the function. So it's controlled by the government, and it's performing functions that the controlling government treats as its own. And they were able to turn down this appeal and say that, yeah, you know what, Terra was going against and in violation of this act. Some of the criminal penalties that go with the act for individuals, violations of the accounting provision, there's a fine up to $5 million or twice the gain or loss caused by such an act. Violations of the bribery provision, there's up to $25 million fine, or again, twice the gain or loss, and up to 5 years in prison on that one. And for corporations, violations of the accounting provision are up to $25 million, or twice the gain or loss. And for violations of the anti-bribery provision, there's up to $20 million, or twice the gain or loss caused. Both of these, there are, instances where they have been more or can be more, such as fraudulent, or if they cause harm to fraudulent transactions, or if they cause harm to a financial institution or another company, it is possible to get higher fines there. A lot of times corporations will settle for a lot more than these minimum or maximum requirements. There was one company that settled for $450 million. So the fines are huge, which kind of lead us to our next issue or shortcoming with this act is the fact that it deters small to medium-sized entities from entering the global marketplace. Originally, the FCPA was created to focus on larger corporations because they are the ones who are able to move internationally and enter that global market. But in the last few years, smaller companies have been included because of advancements in technology. These smaller companies are being able to go internationally. Now, the issue and what is kind of deterring them is these small companies, they don't have the resources, they don't have the business sophistication to avoid liability, to avoid, this kind of things from happening in other countries. We see Mexico, there's a lot of bribery there, but it's always with the smaller companies. A lot of the cartels will go after the smaller ones and they can't really protect themselves. On top of that, there's investigative costs and settlement penalties involved with being investigated by the DOJ or the ACCT that are extreme, as we saw in the last slide, which makes it so these small to medium-sized companies cannot afford it, and so they're either deterred or taken out of the global marketplace, which is and has been a really big issue with it so far. So in conclusion, the FCPA is definitely a necessary statute put in place by the DOJ and the SEC. It was passed about 40 years ago, so there have been some need for clarification on some definitions, which there have been through some cases, like we saw earlier in the presentation. The penalties for violating this act are extreme, pretty high, but we don't, the idea is if the government can, influence or, kind of get the companies within the United States, if they can work well with internationally, they're going to behave well within the U.S. border. So that's kind of the idea. But this can cause small to medium-sized companies not to enter the international markets because sometimes the penalties are disproportionate to the violation that happened. So possibly a fix for that could be fines based on, how big the violation was, so that these smaller companies aren't being hit as hard instead of just kind of a price floor, just like a set fee. Thank you very much for this presentation, and have a good day.